And we're live.
Well, hello everyone. It's Dr. Alan Weinstein here with my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross, and welcome to another episode of Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. Today's episode is brought to you by Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be. And Community Wellness Day. Every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. And the system, the official marketing program of healthcare practitioners everywhere. And the VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring these live hangouts to the desktops, iPhone, iPads, and Samsung devices. As we like to say, we make your apps so beautiful people will want to lick them. Today, we have a special guest. It's Garrett Gunderson. Excuse me. He's a New York Times best-selling author, and we're going to talk about the importance of building relationships for prosperity in your business. Let me tell you a little bit about Garrett, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Randi to start the show. As I said, he is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Killing Sacred Cows, of which I personally read 3 times. It was actually a really easy read and really great information. I've actually shared the stage a couple of times with Garrett. He's a champion of business owners, business professionals, individual investors, and he has dedicated his career to debunking the many widely accepted myths and fabrication that undermine the prosperity and joy of millions of hardworking, honest Americans. His company, Freedom FastTrack, coaches and empowers its members to build sustainable wealth, and he is consistent with passion, knowledge, and life's purpose. His website, for more information, as you can see, is www.freedomfasttrack.com. With that said, Dr. Randi, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Allen, and welcome, everyone. Thank God I have a few seconds after you show that licking the iPhone image, because I think it always throws me for some reason. But anyway, welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us on another one of our weekly hangouts. We have a great guest for you to kind of pick. We're going to pick his brain for you a little bit, get you some good information. And just so I don't feel left out, I have also shared the stage with Garrett. So Garrett's an amazing, unique thinker when it comes to financial information, and we're really excited to have him friend and to have him here today. So without any further delay, I'd like to welcome Garrett to our hangout. Welcome, Garrett. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to be here. Before, I was really working with many chiropractors. I remember John Butcher reached out to me, who owns Lifebook, and he said, "I want to introduce you to Dr. Randi, and I think you guys should, do something together and maybe an interview." And here we are years later doing yet another one. So that was a great introduction from John, and glad to know you and look forward to creating value for the people on this today.
That is true. I forgot about that. I'm glad you reminded me that's how we met, through John Burke and Lifebook and Butcher. And I was just mentioning Lifebook to Dr. Allen today, saying I'm not one of those people that takes a lot of this self-improvement stuff, although I think that people benefit from it, but the one thing that I swear by in my life is a Lifebook. So Garrett, we're going to kind of hold your feet to the fire right off the bat, and go ahead and let us know what gives you the right to be an authority on kind of the financial side of business development.
Well, I think that first of all, the word authority is kind of interesting, because I think anyone that writes a book gets some degree of being an authority, whether they deserve it or not. You know, I remember doing a radio show, I called in one morning, it was a Sacramento radio show, and it was like 3 individuals, morning talk show kind of stuff, and they introduced me as this expert, and I thought, I've never met them, never talked to them, so I just started by saying, "Why do you think I'm an expert?" And then they said, "Well, you wrote a book." And I said, "Well, did you read the book?" They said, "No." And then, so we got into kind of this bantering. But I would say that it started when I was 15 years old, and I started my first officially licensed business, which means I've been an entrepreneur officially since 15. I think I was an entrepreneur from the time I could ever speak. But by being a business owner, I saw that there was a different set of rules for money and investing than there is for everyone else. Because everyone else is kind of taught, just take your money, set it aside, and then 30 years from now, hopefully that's going to work out in a diversified portfolio inside of a retirement plan. But the problem is, it operates by those principles, but that's what they're taught by these financial professionals. So I'd say the first piece is that I lived it. The second was when I was 19 years old in June of 1998, I got insurance licensed, and shortly after got my Series 6 and 63 to sell mutual funds and securities and things you wouldn't hear me talking about favorably in my book today. But when I did that and started getting there, I was the guy that they almost wanted to fire at any firm I was ever around. But they tolerated me because I produced plenty of business for a young guy, but I questioned everything. I was just infinitely curious and questioning, so they got very frustrated. And my philosophy was, I want to make more money following my advice than giving my advice when it comes to finances. So I went out and I bought over 100 real estate properties. I did oil and gas investments. I did 2 IPO investments. I did partnerships and limited partnerships, and you name it. I basically went through the universe of investing, realizing there's plenty of gurus talking about where to invest, but not really identifying the entrepreneurial DNA of an individual and how their investment should be applied. Second is, I don't know everything there is to know about money and finance. I have a deep connected philosophy, and I have a network of professionals that I utilize in order to get that depth. And I incessantly study it, and I have a photographic memory when it comes to money and finance. So I could read things from 15 years ago that I still completely remember today. It just makes sense to me. So I would say that probably the final is the results of the people that I work with. So, and that I'm smart enough to get the team around me that where I am an authority, I'm fine to own that, and where I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant. I know enough to find out where most of the common mistake, but I bring in the expert to get those things done in a full degree.
Well, that's great, and I think sometimes the smartest person is the person that knows what they don't know. And it sounds like you're kind of like that kid that every parent dreads that asks questions about the questions. So they get. I didn't have one of those.
I wasn't quite that kid. Here's honestly why it became that way in finance, is because I had $5,000 that I won when I was a teenager in my business. I won Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and when I went out there and did my first investment, 3 months later, I was in an econometrics course and realized it wasn't going to work the way it was supposed to. And I had also put my family and friends in something very similar, so I now realized it wasn't going to work how it was supposed to for them. So I just didn't ever want to be in that situation where I had to go. It was so hard, Randy. I went into these people and I had to say, hey, you trust me, I love you guys, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just put you in a product that this firm told me to put you in, and I just did some research. I don't think it's going to work out. I just didn't ever want to find myself in that situation ever again because it was painful, but it was profound.
Yeah, well, we all learn from our mistakes, and obviously it panned out for you. Garrett, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because we kind of share part of one of your taglines. I actually kind of. I always say your relationship away from your next level of prosperity, and your original version of that is you are an idea or a relationship away from your next level of prosperity. So if we kind of take the relationship part of that, talk a little bit about, because I know that you talk about how important this is, the process of building relationships, why it's so important, professionally to building your business and obviously, it generating revenue and increasing your net worth.
Well, the most exponential jumps in my life, as far as income, as far as productivity, came when I met influential people that had a big audience, and that, one of Dr. Allen's business partners, Steve Hoffman, he's just like, can I please interview you? And I was like, great, because he just joined my program. All of a sudden, he's introducing me to a whole bunch of people that I would have never met, and he transferred credibility. So I could take this clear back to college. I'm not the guy that could just walk up and talk any time. I've met people like that. I was kind of a little bit more shy and reserved. I know that's probably shocking for some of you that know me, but when someone would introduce me, then I was fine, because they could translate that relationship capital. They could say, here's someone that's worth knowing. Here's someone that I like. And so in the world, that's relationship capital of people, networks, organizations, friends, family, patients, customers, whatever it is. And most people don't fully tap into that because they're not very good at asking for support. They're not good at knowing exactly what it is that they want, and so they're missing out on so much wealth that's sitting there as latent potential, never turned into production from the individuals. The second thing, though, is it's not just who you know, obviously it's what you know, but the wrong relationships have been the most destructive things in my life. I once was in a partnership in a piece of real estate that absolutely cost me plenty of time, money, anguish, and everything as far as trust in humanity for a moment. I mean, it was just like absolutely atrocious, and avoiding that relationship would have given me so much more of my life. But so we got to pick the right relationships, and I kind of have a tool for that. There's people out there that don't want to see me succeed, that were friends with my wife. Maybe they think I was arrogant, or they didn't like someone who was wealthy, or whatever it was. But I decided, rather than confront them and have a big altercation and fight, I just became friendly with them. I never invited them to anything, and I never said yes to any of their invitations. And it eventually went away. And then there's those people that I choose to be friends with. The person who really, brought me into the chiropractic profession was Patrick Gentempo. And he said, I'd love for you to come to Total Solutions. And it was a week and a half later, I just said yes, because it was a key relationship. I didn't know how to make it work. You just find a way to make it work. And I think when you have key relationships, you just have to have a knee-jerk yes. And when they're not part of your key relationships, you have a knee-jerk no, so that you can preserve and save your time for those people that want to see you succeed, want to support you, want to take you to the next level, because that's how that's how you're going to make the biggest impact.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's the philosophy of everything that we teach is, when it comes to marketing or business building, things evolve and change, and probably more in the last 10 years that's true than in the last 50. And, today it's Facebook or Google Hangouts and Twitter, and 5 years from now it'll be something else. But the one thing I always say never changes is this relationship marketing aspect of impacting your business. And it doesn't matter what kind of economic environment we're in, and if you're in healthcare, it doesn't matter what's going on in healthcare. When you build the right relationships, those impact your business, for years and years, if not for the length of your entire career. And I always talk about was the greatest salesman in the world, and being a little kid 45 plus or 40 years ago, not 45 plus years ago, and being on the road with him and seeing him build these relationships. And no matter what company he went to, you talk about always being the #1 provider, but always being the black sheep. That was my dad. He's a little bit of the black sheep, but he was always the #1 provider, because he knew it was all about building relationships and connecting with people. Equity aspect of business that I feel a lot of people don't understand, or don't realize they need to take the time to do this. Not all relationships fall right in your lap, and some of them you have to go out and you have to seek out. And I think that's a really important aspect too. Sometimes we want to break it down for people a little bit. So there's actual little nuggets that you can act on. So if we were talking about professional people, whether they're healthcare providers or other kind of business owners, what do you think, if you had to name 3 things they had to do to achieve greater success in business, what do you think those 3 things would be?
So just for any business owner, what are the 3?
Because I think business translates, across the board as to what things we need to do to be successful.
So I think I mentioned one of the 3 to start this, which is they have to be willing to be supported. So in order to be supported, they have to be able to know exactly what they want. So, I hear this statement all the time, Randy, where people will say, hey, how can I help you? Or what could I do for you? I'm good. No, I'm fine. I'm set. They've literally shut down the possibility to utilize someone offering their gifts, talents, and abilities to take them further. And a lot of it's because they don't know what to say. But I might say, hey, who do you know that's great with technology? I know Dr. Allen's on the phone, so you say, oh, I know him. But the thing is, it doesn't mean that person has to have the answer. But if we at least always have 3 to 5 things, that's it, to our mind at any time, that if someone offers support, we could say, well, here's the things I'm looking for. And they either are going to know someone, or they might know something themselves. And far too often, business owners are rugged individualists that try to do everything on their own. They hit capacity, they hit this ceiling of complexity, and all of a sudden they get worn out. And that's why I think so many, like a lot of times in chiropractic, there's this $1 million mark. I have a $1 million practice. You'll hear that as like a big deal. $1 million is something you can do, and you can do it by just willpower and force and working as hard as you can. But you don't meet people that do $2 million or $3 million unless they understand this first piece, which is they've got to be able to ask for support. So the second thing is you've got to build an amazing team around you, and that has to be A-teamers. I think far too often business owners become cheapskates because they think it's going to help them to reduce their costs instead of hire only the very best people or utilize only the very best systems. And sometimes it's that starts to diminish what they can do because it once again puts it back onto them rather than utilizing people who can absolutely help out in a big way. And like when I hired a CEO, it was a huge financial commitment, but the thing is, my plate got cleared so I could do my 5 things that only I could do. I could do the 5 things that I do best, and I could double the amount of time I was spending in those, and all of a sudden we had a jump in our growth and less frustration for me. I went on vacation to Paris once, didn't take a computer, didn't turn on my phone, and when I came back expected to have a pile of things, but it was all handled because I paid for an A-teamer. So first of all, be willing to ask for support and allow others to support you. Number 2, you basically build the very best possible team you can so that you can do only the most leverageable things or most productive or energetic things that are consistent with your ability. I think that's point number 1 and number 2. And then point number 3, talking about what we're discussing here today, is that you have to completely protect your confidence. And the way to do that is you don't let the doubters in your life. You don't work with people that don't appreciate what you do and who you are. You stay selective. You do not spend time sharing your vision with people that are naysayers and rooted in scarcity. You don't have to save everyone when they don't want to be saved. You focus your time, your energy on the things that really matter, and that way you have people who appreciate who you are, your time is well spent, and it's people who will write you big enough checks, because I think sometimes people just want to get as much patient volume as possible, and then they take people who aren't really committed to their health, who don't pay their bills on time, and it starts to create all those kind of problems. And when it does, it's like now all of a sudden their energy devalues, it diminishes, and they get frustrated, and then the doctor starts to get burned out, and it's too expensive of a cost. So I'll say number 3 this way: you are the greatest asset. Do everything you can to take care of yourself so you have something to give. You know there's plenty of healers out there in the chiropractic world that just sacrifice for everyone else, and they don't take care of themselves, and it hurts them in the long run because they eventually burn out or they eventually start to become bitter, and you can't let that happen.
Yeah, if I want to jump in here also on this conversation, first I want to commend Garrett, because whenever I've heard Garrett speak, and he did it again today, he always starts off by saying he surrounds himself with a great team and they really contribute. You all have a sense of this relationship capital, that it's a two-way street. And then you had said, Garrett, use the term, it's who you know, or maybe it's not just who you know. And I like to say it's not who you know, but it's what you know about the person who you know. And I want you to talk about that, because you mentioned Pat Gentempo, and I want to talk about how you leverage that kind of relationship to take it to the next level.
Man, what a great question. And this is exactly how you do it. When you meet someone of that ilk and caliber, you basically do everything you can to create value for them without having an expectation of what's going to be in return. So Patrick is hard to play that game with sometimes, because I meet him and I'm like, you should come on my radio show. People need to hear this message. I'm like, hey, I'm going boating up by Park City. You want to come and do that? Hey, I'm just thinking everything. I'm like, I have a chef that's making some meals. I'm gonna be in Park City. Would you like? I'm just like, whatever I could do, whether it's big or small. But here's the deal: when he has, it's so rare for Pat to ask for something, but if he did, and he has a few times, I will move mountains to make those things happen. And you know what? You gain so much in those moments where it's just a little bit more effort. It's a little bit out of the way. And most of the time people don't ask for it, especially guys like Pat. Like one time he was coming out to stay in Park City, and there's a major convention going on in Salt Lake. So basically, it was almost impossible to get a rental car. You could get like a little Geo Metro for $2,000 for the week, and I'm going, okay, I've got an extra vehicle. Here's my Cadillac Escalade, right? Doesn't expect it, is almost like the kind of guy to be like, no, I don't, and you just force it upon him because you're like, you've helped me so much. And if you keep that mindset along the way, when you find those guys that always look to reciprocate, you can just play that game all day long, and you just keep thinking, how can I help? But Alan, I don't just ask that. I wouldn't just say, what can I do for you? Because that doesn't get enough. I would say, what are you working on? What are you up to? What are you excited about? What are you struggling with? What one thing would take you to the next level or get you past this obstacle? And that helps me to understand how to offer value versus just say, what can I do for you? Because a lot of people are busy and they don't have that 3 to 5 on the top of their mind to ask you what to support it.
Yeah, don't you also find, and I think this is a great criteria for a personality that you said, stay away from the doubters, the naysayers. I find that the people that I know right off the bat, that first impression, is that personality of you who wants to know what are the 3 to 5 things, and the person on the other end who's looking to reciprocate that for you, and you get that sense right off the bat. You know that person is going to be on your team, and you're going to be on that team just because that's who you both are, right? Don't you see that all the time?
Well, I'm reading this book right now called Give and Take by Adam Grant. And this is a game changer for me because in chapter 7, it really starts to talk about how not everyone's always a giver, and some givers can get taken advantage of, and it can be to their detriment from a prosperity and financial standpoint. And I've seen this in chiropractic where someone's like, oh, you can't afford services, just come in anyway. Oh, well, adjust all your kids for free. Leave some money in the box if you can. And all of a sudden, they start losing out. This talks about when you find someone who may have some traits of being a taker, you do a tit for tat type thing where you're like, great, I'm going to offer something of value because that's my nature. If all they do is keep coming back and ask to take when I ask for support, well, I'm going to know that's a relationship that I'm not going to move forward with because it's a consumptive relationship instead of a productive one. And I think that differentiating factor was something I missed early on in my career. I just was like, help, value, value, value. Dollars follow value, value follows value. It'll all work out in the end. Sure, lead with that. Protect your energy. Protect your value for those people who truly value it and are willing to respect it.
That's so important, and I love having you on and listening to you because so much of this is what we try and teach people all the time. When you go out there, I think people are insecure, uncomfortable sometimes with this process of meeting people, and when they go out there, they're just kind of like, we'll use the word throwing up on people, telling them about themselves and this and that, and sometimes even just offering help right out of the box when, like you said, this person doesn't even know, like they just met you, to just offer whatever. And the interesting thing that I find is that you might be offering things they don't need, whereas if you engage in a relationship, in a conversation, if you actually listen to them, words in one mouth for a reason, you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk, I always say you're gonna hear places where you can like slot yourself in. If you really listen to people and you get them to talk about themselves or what they're doing, or today, Garrett, I'm sure you would agree, if you're going to meet with someone with, the internet, it's a lot easier to know about that person and maybe even know about things that they're working on, or if they're a politician, what bills they're trying to get through, what their passions are. So you can actually ask them questions that are going to get them talking about things that then you might find these places where you can offer valuable help, because what you think might be valuable to them might have absolutely no value to them. Well,
go
ahead.
Lee Brower is a gentleman that once told me, he said, you need to be interested a lot more than you're interesting. and I was like, when he said it, it kind of hit me hard because I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm trying to impress instead of listen. And sometimes my wife even grabs my leg. She's like, shut the hell up and let someone else talk for a second, And so that's a good framework or reminder for me, interested rather than just being interesting. you know, and it's like, because it means you got to listen and you got to truly be interested in what the person's saying.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's, like I said, for some people, I think it's a little bit hard, only because, you know, you're a everyone on this panel is a very confident person, so you're actually confident with having a moment of silence and letting the other person get their thoughts together and say something, whereas some people that don't do this a lot, they're a little uncomfortable and feel like they always have to be talking, like the conversation always has to be moving, whereas, you know, it's okay. And I think one of the other things that's important to say here is, you know, this kind of confidence and having the ability to go out and meet with people and find out where their value is, it doesn't come overnight. You know, it's like anything else. You have to get out there. Some conversations and meetings you have are going to be awesome. Some of them you walk away and all you do is think about, oh crap, I can't believe I said that. Or you think about the conversation and you go, I should have said this when they said that. But that's how you learn and that's how you get better at it. And Garrett, I'm sure you would agree that the way you approach something today with your experience and your knowledge, some of your mistakes, is different than 5 or 10 years ago, maybe even than a year ago.
Hey, look, 15 years ago, my philosophy in finance was, if I just sound smart enough and confuse people, I guess they'll trust me to hand their money over. It took about 2 years to be like, that is the worst case scenario. I want to make it simple, understandable, and empower people, not just do what the industry was teaching me to do early on, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a real important lesson, because especially in your industry, where you're in the finance industry, a lot of times you do have to separate yourself from the status quo, which I know you do, because otherwise everyone thinks you're Bernie Madoff. All of a sudden something happens and now everyone paints every financial advisor. So I think with your book, having read that book when you first started touring, and with seeing you live and seeing you on shows like this, you separate yourself just with your philosophy, your emotion, your attitude, and that, I think, really makes you stand out. And when you learn how to do that in relationships, you don't have to toot your own horn all the time. You don't have to impress people with what you say, because you impress people with who you are.
Well said. Well said. Thank you.
Well, and from a female perspective, I've had a lot of financial advisors, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but none of them are as cute as Garrett either. So, sorry, it had to be said. I'm sure there's a lot of women watching that are thinking it. So.
I hate compliments. Don't ever give me those compliments. Yeah.
So, Garrett, as we tie it up here, give me, you know, we always talk about what we teach and what we use is being out in your community as a business person, local business person, and, you know, building relationships. We do it with Community Wellness Day because we feel it's really a great tool to approach people and kind of bring them in with you, get that opportunity to build that relationship, see where you can help them, work on something together. You know, that's so important to, I'm sure you would agree, when you work on a project with someone, it takes your relationship and the level of trust just to a whole nother level that you can't often do any other way. And so, you know, tell us a little bit about what you feel, if you had to give an action step for those listening here with us today, that they could do to be more successful in their communities right now. What would you tell them to do?
Number one, claim your authority. What is it that you are about in your community that you bring the best forth in? Because look, when I'm introduced on ABC, CNBC, Fox News, they introduce me the way I tell them to introduce me. So you just have to claim your expertise. Number two, what are the 3 to 5 things that you're teaching or could teach your community that they don't currently know that would make the biggest impact? And write an article about those things, and then you can start submitting that to local news stations and potentially be a guest. That's how I got on the media for the first time. And now your face would be shown and on the media. And so when you're doing a community wellness day, you've now claimed a higher level of authority when people have seen you on video or when they've read an article, and you can start using those mediums to start promoting what you're up to with community wellness days. So claim your authority, write an article about 3 to 5 things that you bring to the table that is so important and that no one else really knows. Submit that to different media outlets and then get in on those, and then you can start promoting in a bigger way.
I think that is a great place for us to tie it up today. We want to thank Garrett for taking the time to be here with us today. It was great to see you, even if not in person. It was great to get a chance to meet with
Great
you.
to
And
see you.
always love hearing what you have to say and inspiring people to do the things they need to be great business people. For those of you watching, anyone that's interested in any of our programs, you can just reach out for us wherever you're watching, and we'll get that to you. If you're watching a replay, you'll see a link that's appearing on your screen now. Dr. Allen's going to let us know where we can reach out for Garrett again, but anyone that's interested, feel free. For any of our guests, you can always reach out to us and we'll direct you to where you need to go. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Allen to close for this week's Hangout.
Well, you've been listening to Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. I'm Dr. Alan Weinstein. Today's show is brought to you by Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be, and Community Wellness Day. Every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. The System, the official marketing program of healthcare professionals everywhere. The VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring your live Hangouts just like this one to the desktop, iPhone, iPad, and the Samsung devices. I want to just give you Garrett's information, his website, www.freedomfasttrack.com. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross, we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Bye, everyone.